Amanda. Hi, Reagan. How are you?
Good. Should we turn off the recording?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lowell Parking Study Downtown and Jambra Joint Neighborhood Meetings. We're going to allow a few extra minutes for people to join, and we'll get started soon. Thank you for your patience. Okay, I think we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lowell Parking Study in Downtown and Jambra Joint Neighborhood Meeting. My name is Christine McCall. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Lowell. I would like to remind everyone of the rules for participating in this meeting, as well as remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. We have interpreters who are translating the meeting tonight into Spanish, Portuguese, and Khmer. If you require these services, please click the interpretation button on your screen. It's the globe icon, and select which language you wish to hear. At this moment, I will ask all English speakers to please select English as their chosen language. This will allow you to hear translated non-English comments during the Q&A. If you don't have a globe icon, you're all set. If you're speaking English, if you need another language and you don't have the globe icon, put it in the chat. Next slide. As we are only able to share one version of the meeting presentation on screen tonight, we wanted to let you know that we will make meeting presentations available in other languages on the project website. Next slide. You can view closed captions by clicking the closed captions feature and selecting from the options below. Show subtitle will display a caption at the bottom of the screen. View full transcript will display the meeting's audio transcription in a window to the right. Next slide. You may use the chat button to submit a typed question or comment at any point during the meeting. We will be monitoring the chat during the presentation, but ask that you hold comments and questions for the breakout discussions that we will be having later in the meeting. If you have a technical problem, please share your issue in the chat feature at any point during the meeting, and we will respond as quickly as possible. I'll note that all project team staff members are listed with project team or City of Lowell next to their name in the participant list. A reminder to everyone that the chat is visible. to everyone, and we encourage you to keep any comments in the chat respectful to others. I would like to recognize Terry Ryan, he's the city's parking director, and Chris Hayes, who's a DPD staff that are here with us tonight, as well as recognize the Belvedere neighborhood group leader, Jack Moynihan. We're also joined by State Rep Vanna Howard and City Councilor Rodney Elliott. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Next, I'd like to introduce Michael Clark from the consulting firm Stantec, who will provide more detail about the study and review the city's parking resources.
Sorry. Great, let's advance to the next slide. So on screen is an agenda for tonight's meeting. We'll be giving a short presentation before we proceed to another short question and answer session, and spending a lot of tonight's meeting time in breakout rooms. Our agenda for this evening: first, we will introduce our project team, as well as Zoom instructions, as Christine has just detailed. Next, we'll review the study's purpose and goals. Next, we'll present some data regarding parking inventory and utilization in downtown. Next, we'll discuss the study's next steps and schedule. And finally, we'll have our question and answer and breakout room session. So before I begin the presentation, we would like to get a sense of the language preferences for the discussion portion of the meeting. We are able to offer breakout rooms for up to 4 languages, so we want to find out what rooms are requested for tonight. So at this point, I'll ask for the poll to be launched. We'll leave this poll up for a few more moments. Great. Looking at the poll, it seems that we have quite a lot of English. Sorry, we'll take a quick pause to work through some of
there's
these
some people are
technical
having some
issues.
audio issues.
Okay, hopefully we're good. Sorry about that. That might have been my fault. But our survey, if we can show the results, we have much English interpretation for tonight, and then 1 request for a Khmer interpreted room. So we will work to set up those rooms while we work through the presentation, and they'll be all set during the breakout room discussion in just a few minutes. Next slide, please. With the team this evening, as Christine mentioned, she is representing the City of Lowell as the Director of Economic Development, as well as Terry Ryan, the city's parking director. From Stantec Consulting, I'm Michael Clark, a project planner on this effort. Jason Schreiber is the project manager. And Liza Cohen and Amelia Casey are each assisting us with breakout rooms this evening, as well as planners on the project. And from Regina Villa Associates, Reagan Checchio is our outreach coordinator, and Amanda Poggenberg is outreach support. Next slide, please. At this point, we'll review the study's purpose and goals. Next slide. So the city is undertaking this study through a housing choice grant from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. And we have identified 4 key purposes of this study. First, we seek to analyze existing parking inventory and utilization. Next, we hope to study parking-related policies and management. Third, we're looking to compare parking supply and demand to land uses, both existing and future land uses. And finally, we're looking to better enable car-free lifestyles. Next slide, please. We've also identified 8 goals with this study. At our community meeting on February 2nd, we went through each of these goals in some detail. The presentation for that meeting is posted on the study's website, which we'll have a link to at the end of this presentation. But to quickly review each of the 8 goals, first, we're looking to align parking standards with economic development goals. Next, we're looking to update the parking system to reflect citywide goals, such as those from Go Lowell and Sustainable Lowell 2025. Third, we're looking to improve the overall parking experience, especially in the city's public parking facilities. Next, we're looking to reduce parking congestion and promote parking availability. Fifth, we're looking to adjust parking pricing to better manage demand and system costs. Next, we're looking to streamline the city's residential parking programs. Next, we're looking to incentivize greater use of the city's parking garages. And finally, we're looking to determine future parking needs to support growth in downtown. Next slide, please. This is a study schedule. Stantec has been working with the City of Lowell since the beginning of fall on this effort, looking to collect data and conduct neighborhood evaluations. We'll present much of that in the next few slides. The study is also looking at operations and management of the city's public parking assets, both garages, surface lots, and on-street parking. We'll have 2 rounds of public and stakeholder outreach. This meeting is part of the first round. As I mentioned, we had a community meeting last Tuesday that many of you might have attended, and this is the second of 4 neighborhood meetings. We'll be having a second round of public outreach in the spring to discuss draft findings of the plan. And soon we'll start drafting some of those findings, recommendations, and strategies, as well as finalize those plans following public outreach efforts, including City Council presentation. Next slide, please. Now we'll present some data from the downtown neighborhood. Next slide, please. So the data here is showing our parking inventory for downtown Lowell. Excuse me, I'm just trying to move a box to make it a little easier for me to see. Great, sorry about that. So you can see in the downtown area, on-street parking, much of the on-street parking is metered parking. Green signifies residential permit and reserved on-street parking spaces. These are more up on Kirk Street and John Street near the Downs Garage. And in this instance would be reserved on-street parking. The orange signifies time-limited on-street parking. These are spaces that say you're allowed to park for 15 or 30 minutes, but you don't have to pay a meter. And finally, purple is unregulated parking. Off-street parking assets are outlined in blue. The dark blue shows public parking facilities. As you can see in this map, much of that is the 5 garages in the downtown area. The light blue signifies restricted parking. By restricted parking, we mean that this is parking that is reserved for a specific use. So it might be associated with a residential complex, with an office, with a retail building. It means that when you park there, the expectation is that you're parking to visit that building Whereas if you parked in the dark blue public parking facilities, you'd be free to go about throughout the city and be able to leave your car. Finally, this is a little more relevant outside of downtown, but you can see a couple of green dots on the lower part of the map. This signifies the green and white signs that you see elsewhere in the community primarily. We call these residential placard parking for the purposes of this study. Next slide, please. This shows the parking inventory throughout downtown Lowell, the numbers tied to it, excuse me. In total, we have 9,244 total parking spaces in our downtown inventory. Of these, a little over 3,000 are restricted off-street spaces. That's the light blue. And there are about 5,250 publicly available off-street spaces, the dark blue in the map. We've also tabulated 651 metered on-street parking spaces, 29 time-limited on-street parking spaces, 20 reserved on-street parking spaces, 4 residential placard signs, and 81 unregulated parking spaces. I noticed in the chat box, we had a comment about the Hamilton Canal Garage not being included in this map. That is correct. For the purposes of our data collection, as I'll go through on the next few slides, we did not count the Hamilton Canal Garage as part of our data collection because it is so recently built. But that is correct. It is not reflected in these slides. Next slide, please. This map shows parking utilization by midday. So I'll caveat the information displayed here and note that our data collection obviously has been hindered by COVID-19. We did not collect new counts in the fall of 2020 because we felt that would not be reflective of normal operating conditions in the city. So the counts that we have conducted and are presenting to you right now show midday 2016 data from the latest aerial imagery from a midday. You can see on the bottom right-hand corner there that this data was collected Tuesday, May 10th of 2016. We're seeing a utilization of approximately 55% throughout the downtown area. You can see with the colors in the map here that the reds, the oranges, and the greens note a pretty healthy supply, should say use of parking. That includes in the Downs Garage, in the Leo Roy Garage, in the Early Garage, as well as on many of the on-street metered spaces. However, we also see some instances of low utilization in the blue, 0 to 30% and 30 to 60%. Next slide, please. One thing that we've done with this data, given that it is reflecting a midday condition, is to adjust it to reflect an overnight condition. Obviously, peak parking can differ by time of day, especially for residential areas. We're also interested in your thoughts on downtown parking conditions, especially from residents. We'll have some questions in the breakout room that speak to that exactly. So I'll emphasize that this is an estimate. We're using data from a vendor called Streetlight that collects how many cars travel in and out of the zone that you see here on the map. But our estimates show that we have approximately 10% utilization of the parking facilities in downtown during the overnight. And you can see some of the more highly utilized places are reflected in the darker blue, are associated with residential parking. Next slide, please. Next, we'll go through remaining steps of this project. Next slide, please. We'll be looking to finish the downtown parking profile. Much of the information that was presented at the February 2nd community meeting concerned downtown conditions, which we are representing tonight. We're looking at downtown specifically with a special consideration given its use throughout the community, as well as by visitors coming to work or shop or whatever you have. And one of the reasons why we're excited for this meeting tonight is to get an understanding of how it works for those of you who regularly use downtown or live downtown. We'll also be conducting an operations evaluation of the parking system. This includes infrastructure conditions at each of the garages and other public parking facilities, as well as a look at the financial management. We'll finish our residential parking assessment. This is primarily in some of the outlying neighborhoods. This includes a hotspot analysis of where parking is in high demand, as well as an evaluation of permit programs. And finally, we'll detail recommendations as part of the draft and final parking plan. Next slide, please. Additional outreach on this project. We'll have a second public meeting in mid-spring to present the draft parking plan. And the final parking plan is anticipated to be released in early summer. Next slide, please. Finally, we'll have some of this information up on another slide at the end of the presentation following the breakout rooms. But you can find the project website as well as links to the survey. You may have taken the survey already. If you have not, we encourage you to do so. That's at lowellma.gov/parking study. You can also see on this slide the project email, as well as the Facebook page. We're using the Go Lowell Facebook page to communicate information about the parking study. Next slide. At this stage, I think I'm going to pass it off to Reagan from Unavilla Associates to lead us through our Q&A session.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome, everybody. So we're about to send you into some breakout rooms, and we want to have as much time as we can for a great small group discussions about some of the material that's been presented so far tonight. But I did just want to ask if there are any questions or clarifying questions about Michael's presentation before we get into those small group discussions. Okay. So what I will say is that each breakout room is going to have, there's going to be 4 rooms. It's going to have an assigned group leader who will introduce him or herself and lead the discussion. We're going to randomly assign you into the rooms. The breakout sessions are not going to be recorded, unlike the main meeting, but the group leaders are going to be taking detailed notes that will be incorporated into a written summary of the meeting. The breakout rooms are going to last until 7:20. At which point you'll see a countdown clock that will start, and you will then automatically rejoin this main session where we will all share what we've learned. So Amanda, I will ask if there are no questions, and if we are ready, I think we could send folks into the breakout rooms. Amanda, is everyone back from the breakout room? Excellent. So we'll start the recording, and I will welcome you all back and say that I hope the breakout rooms were interesting, and I'm looking forward to learning more about your thoughts from the group leaders. I'm going to invite each facilitator from the sessions to share the high points of the discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, this feedback is going to be incorporated into the final summary notes from the meeting. So I will start with Jason. If you want to share some high points from your session.
Thanks, Reagan. Yes, it was a great session. And again, thank you to everybody in there. I'd say there was a number of concerns that were brought up, namely about the opportunity for service vehicles, deliveries, et cetera, to have sufficient time to park in downtown. The system works overall very well for visitors, but once you get beyond the 2-hour limit or you want to use a loading zone, that can be a little bit difficult. There was some concern about garage operations. Sometimes they're not too comfortable to walk into, but more importantly, sometimes there's some kind of parking beyond the lanes, let's put it. But in general, I would say that most folks acknowledge that the data that we have for utilization is pretty accurate, that indeed it's busy in downtown. You may not find a space right away. Sometimes you might have to circle, but you will find one during the day. And at night, you won't find it right out front if you're looking for a space,
Muy bien, are you able to hear me
but
now?
you'll usually find it nearby.
Perfecto, thank
The
you.
garages are busy, but there
Sabemos que
is
tenemos
some
problemas con
parking,
algunos de
available.
garajes, que tenemos problemas especialmente con los vehículos que están haciendo algún delivery en la ciudad, que tienen
I will note that we're
posibilidad de
hearing
parqueo.
Spanish. I think, Jose, maybe you're not on the Spanish language channel.
My apologies.
No worries.
Anyways, I was done there.
Okay, were you done, Jason? I'm sorry. Excellent. Eliza?
Hi. We had a great discussion, some Lowell residents and folks who frequent downtown Lowell. So it was great to hear both of those perspectives. I think my main takeaways were we had a good discussion about the Leo Roy Garage and how it's a great resource for folks who live downtown. And that sometimes for people who live downtown, having visitors can be a challenge, trying to find a spot for them to easily park and just do their visit and not have to figure out permit handoffs and all of that. A lot of votes for snow removal, not just shoving snow to the side, but clearing out bus stops and sidewalks and making space for people to be mobile in downtown. I think those were the three highlights. So thank you very much to my group.
Thank you. And Michael?
Jason took the words out of my mouth regarding time limits and how service vehicles and vendors for residents of downtown work. We had a really robust discussion about how in some instances a vehicle needs 3 or 4 spaces, 3 or 4 hours, especially if you're going back and forth to get tools and whatnot, and how metered spaces might not work for that. We discussed some other options, including renting a bag meter for the space downtown, and how residents can navigate these options, as well as potential future options for these types of visits. We also had some feedback regarding the Leo Roy Garage, how it is actually quite well utilized for residents during the night. So we will revisit those assumptions that we're making and update as appropriate. We also had discussion regarding some parking enforcement. Obviously, folks are looking for less expensive parking options, and noting that especially for some nighttime events, it can be difficult to find on-street spaces outside of the metered parking times, and it would be nice if some of those spaces were more open at more times for individuals to take advantage of that. So on the whole, it was a really good discussion, and glad we had it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Amelia, last but not least.
definitely echo what everyone else was saying in their breakout rooms. Something a little bit different in our group, we actually got some pretty positive feedback about the Market Street Garage in particular, that it accommodates people's residential parking needs. The only feedback or critic about that or critique is that there needs to be kind of some wayfinding signage inside, figuring out where you parked your car if you can find it. And also that a lot of the EV charging spaces are pretty full. So that's a pretty interesting feedback that we heard. Also, echoing what Michael says with the enforcement, we heard some feedback that some residential folks park on street spaces close to businesses overnight. So taking those spots, especially during peak times from 5 to 10 p.m. and overnight. So that's something that's really important as well. And in general, there's a lot of informal activity going on for shared parking, for visitors. So parking in those spaces and off-street facilities that are not well utilized during the off-peak times. So there's potential for that in the future, possibly.
Awesome, thank you. So Christine, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Reagan. And thank you all for being here with us tonight and sharing your thoughts and your feedback. As you can see on the screen, we have a couple more neighborhood meetings this month. And if you have any additional comments or questions, you can always drop us a line on the website or go up online to go there to fill out the online survey if you haven't done so already. And if anything comes up after tonight's meeting, you can always email us parkingstudy@lowellma.gov. Thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you.